Wheel of Genre, the show for readers who love their fathers, not in spite of, but rather because of how they smell of cabbage. Right now, we are reading every story in Ann and Jeff VanderMeer's The Weird Anthology, including this one, Mervyn Peake's Same Time, Same Place. I'm Zach, and this week I am really interested in artist writers. We've read a few of them in our time in this anthology. Leonora Carrington, most recently, Alfred Cuban to start off with, and I always feel like they got a little je ne sais quoi.
Yeah. Arters. I'm Bob. I'm interested in the idea of you ask what you want for, you go searching for something and you definitely get it, but what you get might be more than you asked for.
Hi, I'm Chris from Liminal Spaces, and I am interested in the trauma of going outside and how it relates to how you view your parents.
Well, before we talk about the story, what do we know about Mervyn Peake?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Gormenghast.
Oh.
Titus Groan, which I haven't read yet, and my viewers are constantly like, you must read Mervyn Peake. And I've heard that this can either be super slow and boring to some readers or absolutely incredible. But yeah, this is what I know him mainly for. And I was kind of shocked when I saw his name in this anthology because I didn't know anything even beyond this. So that's what I know him for. And one other thing that I'm sure is what you were fishing for.
No. I actually don't know the other thing. But I want to say when we guested on your channel, when we were recording, someone left comments in the chat talking about Mervyn Peake. And the impression I got was that Gormenghast was slightly infamous, like really, really divisive. I remember the person in the chat was like, do not read Gormenghast. Never read Gormenghast.
Yeah, in this Ballantine edition, it's 568 words, but I feel like a lot of people say it's the atmosphere is what it's about, and that I would absolutely love it. So it's on my TBR. But I mean, to read the whole trilogy, it's like Lord of the Rings. Like it's huge. It's really big. Plus, he drew.
He drew.
That's not really. He created art.
Yeah, he illustrated. I think a couple children's books. I think he did Alice in Wonderland, as well as a few others. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, I'd really be interested in checking these out.
Alice in Wonderland, Treasure Island. That's all I can think of off the top of my head. And I went and looked up his illustrations, and they're pretty cool. And I think he illustrated his own work as well, if I remember correctly. But I don't think they put it in here.
Well, the last thing that I dug up out of the trenches of the internet is that he was born in Guangxi, China. I thought that was really interesting.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if that affects anything at all.
Yeah,
aesthetically.
How long was he there?
Cool.
Does it say?
He was born in 1911, and was stationed there for 12 years.
So he grew up there. Yeah.
You know what? Correction. I know people are going to be screaming at me in the comments. He was not born in Guangxi. He was born in Jiangxi. Very different place. But yeah, he was there for 12 years.
When I heard you say that was the wrong one.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if that affected his later writing. I mean, being there till he was 12, I'm sure it would. Absolutely.
Probably a transformative experience for any kid to be, growing up. I mean, his parents were British, so they're over there working. And, 12 years old, that's most of your formative experiences. And then I imagine he went back to, an English-speaking country after that. So imagine that kind of like shift, that kind of like, total upheaval in your life.
Right. Of
living one way and then just a completely different way for the rest of your life.
Yeah, when we look at these two societies, there are differences down to, communal ideology and individuality, and I think that probably made for a very interesting artist. And I wonder, I am going to read Titus Groan and see. Everybody says Titus Groan is pretty dang good, but Gormenghast, the second volume, is where it's at. So eventually I'll be doing that. But yeah, I don't know if I could see it in this story that we're doing today.
Okay, so he is 2.5 hours. He was 2.5 hours away from where I am now. So that's interesting. Maybe I'll go there someday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literary tourism.
That's right.
I'm
That's
into
right.
it now.
It's the coolest thing.
I'm going to see Robert E. Howard's house, and earlier I went into
So jealous.
the Shining Hotel, the one where Stephen King like dreamt and then woke up and had the whole Shining in his brain. Yeah, that you can do that in Colorado, and it's a great time. So, yeah, I think literary tourism is a cool idea.
Zach and I used to live near where they shot the outside scenes of that too, Timberline Lodge. Yeah.
Another. It's amazing how much tourism that book generates, because I think both of those hotels, the Stanley and I forgot what that one was called. I mean, I think people are
Timberline.
Yeah, Timberline.
I think earlier we were saying maybe it's a formative experience to have lived one place, moved to another place, but maybe we don't necessarily see it in same time, same place in this story. But I think this is one of the key pieces of this that I'm really interested in is we have a young man growing up. He's still at his parents' house. He's like a young teenager, a young adult at this point, and he really just dislikes living there, and he wants to get out. And what he says is, to the center of the world, I told myself, to Piccadilly Circus, where anything might happen.
Yeah.
What did I want to happen? He wants an adventure. He's calling himself to adventure. But he is going to find out he's going to get something much smaller than he thought he was getting.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Adventure. And what did he keep saying? A strawberry blonde woman?
Strawberry blonde woman is what he's hoping for.
Adventure and a strawberry blonde woman. Yeah, I loved the beginning of this. I love this concept because I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she's in this stage where she has to rebel, but she doesn't like have anything really strongly to rebel against with me. She's like, I want a job, and I'm like, great. Here's how you go through that process. And but she's got this need in her that can sometimes turn into impotent rage that she doesn't understand. She just knows that she's bored of what she's doing. She's almost done with high school. She's bored of what she's doing, and she's ready to do something. And there's no way she can put a name on that. And I feel like the beginning of this story, where he is sitting looking at his father, who is exhaling smoke constantly and smells like cabbage, and he's looking at his dad, and he's like, man, I hate this guy. And then he's looking at his mom, who wears the heels of her shoes down through hard work. And he's like, I hate her too, which is such an interesting thing, because I never felt like he absolutely hated his parents. I felt like he was fed up with that mundanity of day-to-day existence, which is terrible on people that are going through the instinctual process of separation from the people that have raised them. Like he has to hate them. He has to go look for adventure. And in a weird way, this is a really tragic story because of how this goes. I feel like his after this tale, his lot in life is it's firm. He's never going to be able to change this.
Yeah, as I was reading this, I was like, wow, this has some of the more like vivid and surrealistic and kind of like fantastic language. Maybe that's probably the clearest word, the most fantastic language I've seen in almost any of these stories in the weird, to where sometimes I'd have to read a paragraph 2 or 3 times just to figure out what's going on. But despite that, I think that some of the psychological insights of Mervyn Peake are some of the most grounded and like realistic. Like you're talking about with your daughter, or just yesterday, me and a couple of friends were all comparing the worn down edges of our shoes on the outside of them. And, and I had a friend who said, oh yeah, like I realized that was happening. And I said, I don't like this at all. So I consciously made an effort to walk differently, straighten my back, and, paid attention to how I step, trying to escape the mundane of the edges of your shoes being worn down because you walk funny, something about this story I thought was really like, he's pulling from real life, Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I found it opposite from you. I found this to be a really easy one to read. Now, granted, I have been reading like H.P. Lovecraft and William Hope Hodgson. So like one of the things that I really loved about this is how structurally solid this is as a story. There's no structural surprises here. And also I feel like Mervyn Peake had a solid grasp of the language. He really he presented this easily, but I think there's a lot of kind of philosophical depth to it.
You know what it reminds me a lot of, you guys, is I don't know if you read this as a kid or read it again later as an adult, but Where the Wild Things Are. Where Max, gets so mad at his mom and he's like, I don't want to be here. And he imagines himself into a completely other land. When our narrator here is fed up, like you said, Chris, I hate my mom. There's no good reason really to hate his parents. He's just finding excuses. But then he says, I got to get out. I want adventure. I want life. And somehow this mundane life is not life. It's not just I'm tired of it. To me, it no longer represents what life is. It's sweltering, it's boxing me in. But then when he goes out, he goes towards the circus, Piccadilly Circus, and he says, here was the jungle all about me. And I was lonely. The wild beasts prowled around me. The wolf packs surged and shuffled. But he's just going into the city. Yeah. But for him, it represents this really key moment of rebellion. Like, it is necessary for him to rebel. The funny thing is, though, you're right, it's tragic, because when he gets involved in this other life, that other life is not just fun and monsters and adventure and craziness that can just go on being craziness. Even though it looks weird, they are like a tight-knit family. It's a circus family. And when he gets involved, he breaks their family. And to him, it's like kind of going out and, slumming, or going out and thinking, I'm just here for a few laughs and a few things. But he really commits to something. And when he comes back, he's broken something that used to be adventurous in his mind, but he finds out is just as realistic as his old real life.
Okay, I want to say one more thing really quickly about his mother's shoe, because I find that such a well-crafted concept, and it's this kind of central image. The story begins with the image of a worn shoe and ends similarly with this image of the worn shoe, not like the last lines or anything, but that's the frame of the story, is his parents. And it's so interesting to me that in order to express the rage of the mundanity of life, he picks this image that is not an image that you would think would be annoying. Like if somebody said, what do you think when I bring up the concept of somebody wearing a pair of well-worn shoes that are worn down at the heels? You're going to talk about hard work. You're going to talk about dedication. You're not going to talk about, oh my God, life is mundane and I hate the people wearing those shoes. And I think that is such a powerful moment for this. And I think that he is going out, if we transition to that middle part now, where he goes out looking for adventure, I think he's up for anything, but like you were saying, in a weird way, and we'll have to get into this in the end, Bob, also up for nothing, like his own. Well, we'll get into that in the end. Yeah, so he leaves the house angrily after tripping over the carpet and heads to Piccadilly Circus to find, at first, I think he's looking for a house of ill repute. But he's like, I don't know, like, where does one go to a house of ill repute? He has no idea. So I think he ends up going to the restaurant that he literally visits with his family. Because he says the tone of the place was completely different. He walks in to this restaurant for the first time in a later time, and is like, it's like a whole new restaurant here all of a sudden, which means he went there earlier with his parents to eat. The only place he knows to go is this place where his parents eat with him.
So let's talk about what happens inside of this restaurant. Like, he meets a woman.
She's not a strawberry blonde.
But
she's okay. And God, he constantly describes her as big-headed. Her big head, which at the time I was reading, I was like, that is such an interesting descriptor. Like she's obviously beautiful. He is obviously very taken with her, but he constantly describes her as as having a big head, which is not how usual writers would usually describe the beauty of a woman. And yeah, he seems to constantly notice her big head.
As someone who's kind of like familiar with the beats of this anthology, I was like really expecting something like, oh gosh, Bob, what was that story you read with the spider woman?
Oh, Hans Heinz Yours? I think it's called
Hans
The Spider.
Heinz, you were the spider. Yeah. Where
he's
I was
looking across the
honestly
room.
expecting. Yeah. He's looking out the window. He sees a woman, and they have this communication game. It's no words, just the gestures, and then of course it turns out she's a monstrous predator of some kind of spider, and if goes to. You know how it goes. You know how
Fun
it goes
stuff.
with these things. So I was expecting, I was expecting something much more supernatural with how this was playing out, with them mostly communicating with their fingertips, and then he goes to touch her foot under the table, but there's no feet there.
I got to talk about that when I get a chance. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me, what did you think of that moment? How did you feel when that happened?
So it was this throwaway moment. So he keeps talking to this woman, but she'll never get up and leave. She dismisses him after they have these loving moments, and he comes night after night to talk to this woman. But whenever they're done, she's like, "Okay, go ahead," and she's always there before he gets there. I think at one point he shows up like 40 minutes earlier, and she's there. Like I started feeling this like this person lives in this place. This is where this person lives. And then there's this throwaway moment where they're touching through fingertips and they're talking and they're so in love. And he reaches out with his foot to touch her foot under the table and can't find her foot. It's just this throwaway line. And my brain just went like I was like, okay, this person has no feet. What kind of ghosts can I think of? And then, of course, I don't know if this is true in China as well. I'm sure it is. This concept of ghosts have no feet. So if you think somebody's a ghost, you check their feet. That's big in Japan. Is that true in China as well?
I've never heard that, but I love it.
Oh, maybe it's just Japan.
I'll ask some friends. It's really interesting.
Yeah. So you'll always see in these scary stories, Kaidan and stuff, it's like, check their feet. But you know what I thought of? Right when I read that passage, I thought of the children's story that I grew up with, and maybe you guys did too, called The Green Ribbon. Are you familiar? Okay, this was huge in my childhood, and probably a lot of Gen Xers' childhoods, where this guy falls in love with a woman who always wears a green ribbon around her neck, and it's Alan Schwartz, the same guy that did Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, but it's not in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. It's in a different anthology. But he marries her. And she says, okay, I'll marry you under one condition: you never ask about the green ribbon that is around my neck. And he lives his whole life, and she's on her deathbed. And finally he's like, look, I promised this, but I'm going to do this. I am going to spoil this story right now. It's a kid's story. It's awesome. And you've probably already guessed it, but he's like, why do you always wear this green ribbon around your neck? And she's like, take it off. And he takes it off, and her head falls off. And that's the whole story. Yeah. And it's incredible. It's a story that has lived in my consciousness since I first read it as a young pup. I mean, just absolutely incredible story. And I thought of that, like, instantly, like, is this person some kind of supernatural creature that is somehow surviving without legs? And it's strange how hard I worked to make this supernatural. I didn't even realize how much I wanted it to be supernatural, so much so that I just expected it to be supernatural.
And I think that goes back to exactly why I felt like some of the language was more difficult for me, because I also came in with the expectation of supernatural. And then when I weighed the options of what the reveal was, I was like, man, I hope this is supernatural. But then when it was actually quite mundane, I guess we can kind of skip ahead to kind of talk, so the reveal is that, her and, all of her friends are circus performers, and she is a little person. That's the reveal.
I don't think that's the reveal. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I think she walks on her hands and is nothing from the waist down.
Interesting.
That's why he didn't find her legs. And that's why he kept saying her head was big. I assume she's a normal size from here up. But you've seen those where they like tie the shirt and then they walk on their hands.
Sure,
and
sure.
If you read all the description of her coming up, he said she crawled like a beast and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm sorry, I took that a different way.
No, yeah, well, so that's really interesting. Yeah, because I went little person, and then I did some research online, to see what reviewers said about this. And my reading was kind of mirrored what a lot of the other reviews said, but that doesn't mean anything. I've read reviews, for a lot of these stories where I'm just like, that's not what happened at all. Bob and I just read Merce Rodoreda's The Salamander, and no one online can seem to agree whether or not like an assault took place or not. It's really wild, So I guess what I'm saying is, for me, when I talk about like the abstractedness of the language or the kind of fantastic elements of it, is that it seems like there's all kinds of room for different interpretation.
Yeah.
I think you might be right, Chris. I think you might be right, but I'm just pointing out that a lot of the reviews and my initial reading definitely lean towards
interesting.
Little personism.
Yeah, I never even went there. What did you think, Bob?
I think I just didn't. I think because the big head was emphasized so much, I definitely thought it was someone who's shaped differently, but I didn't actually go far enough to think about what that actually meant.
Do you mind if I read a quote?
Please.
Go for it.
Yeah. And then suddenly it all happened. A door of their room must have opened, for all at once all the heads in the room were turned in one direction, and a moment later something in white trotted like a dog across the room. But it was no dog. It was vertical as it ran. I thought at first that it was a mechanical doll. So close was it to the floor I could not observe its face, but I was amazed to see the long train of satin that was being dragged along the carpet behind it. It could go either way. That is so interesting. Wow.
The verb run is really, it's challenging, but I don't know. Oh, hold on. Before we say anything.
How interesting. You took me completely off guard when you said that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's like the fun part of having these conversations, like these stories, like, you read them and sometimes you think it's so simple, but you can really find some interesting nuances or different interpretations, or just find people who take it a completely different direction than you. And I do think, I still do think that there is merit to what you're saying.
Yeah.
But, to get back to the idea of like, is it supernatural or not? As I was weighing the options, of like, okay, can we interpret this supernaturally, or is it like, mundane? Perhaps, just as mundane as his life at home, maybe even a hyper mundanity of his life at home. I found myself as a reader being like, man, I wish this was supernatural, but it actually might be thematically way more interesting not being supernatural.
I think that's one of the big points for the narrator. We can really see, especially in that description where the narrator is really rude there, and we can see, wow, come on, man. Like you've entered into this community, you started a relationship, and then this person's different. You didn't realize that, and now you think that they're not, good enough for you. But I think it's interesting because he really wants it to be supernatural too. As he's meeting all of her friends, they're people in a circus. It's not really clicking that they're people, like they're just regular people, but work for the circus, and some of them look strange. Because one is a guy who has a long neck, and he's like, what is it? Who am I talking to here? He says he had the longest neck on earth. His starched collar was the length of a walking stick, and his small bony head protruded from its extremity like the skull of a bird. The other two gentlemen, and he goes on describing someone with tattoos, a bearded lady, all of these people who are part of a circus, and he's just not quite getting that these are regular people working for a circus who just look a little bit different. He's thinking, I'm really in Fantasyland now. This is great. I'm in this weird place that doesn't really exist. I'm in a place that is outside of reality. And when he confronts it, he sees it straight on and he says, oh, this is reality. And then he runs. He escapes that other version of reality. I think it really shows us this narrator and his kind of prejudice, and also his making up a fantasy that wasn't there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important. I want to add just really quick, he does not meet these people.
He sees them, though.
Yes, he sees them, and he sees them from one of these red double-decker buses.
He sees them before that, too, yeah.
Does he? I don't think he does. I think he looks through the window. He's going to meet her at a specific location for the wedding, and it just so happens that he's on the second floor. I mean, he's on the second tier of one of these buses, and he pulls up to this window and he can see directly into the room where he's going to meet, and he sees these people, and that's where we get this description, and he just doesn't get off the bus. And I feel like there's two ways that we can take this. The way that I really want to take it is that Mervyn Peake is saying that this young man's prejudice stops him from obtaining the adventure that he so desired. That he literally had the adventure right there in his hands, but because of the otherness of these people that he saw, this family, like you said, Bob, that he had to run away, and that he chose his mundane existence over the amazing adventure he could have had. That's, I think, the nicest way to interpret this story. Unfortunately, there was a line at the very end where he straight up says that she is animalistic, and it just kind of kicked me out of the story. I couldn't take it. It made me think of Freaks, the movie Freaks, One of Us, which is a great film that has, I mean, it's still others, people that, look different. But I think the message is a little better in that one than it was in this one. I don't know. What did you guys think?
It brought me to the X-Files episode that takes place in the circus performer community in Florida, where they all go to retire after their days in the circus, which was a very humanizing look, I thought.
Oh,
not
nice.
That, it wasn't like they were dehumanized before, but I thought it was good. I thought it was a good, inside peek. It was a good narrativization of, that feeling of just being like, well, we don't fit anywhere else, so we'll create a little community for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think, this is written in the 60s. So I think that was a time when social change was occurring. I really want to say that Mervyn Peake was making a statement about accepting mundanity over the possible great adventures that you could have in life, instead of saying, oh my God, this is a story about a woman that was not normal, that tried to trick him, and that luckily he discovered the trick before, was able to get away, and realized that his proper place was with his parents, because that reading sucks.
Yeah.
It's not good. It really isn't. I like the other reading more. I think it's more fun.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, as I read it, it was definitely meant to condemn him. So the final sentence in it, or I guess we'll do a final couple sentences. That evening after supper, I sat there. I remember 6 years ago in my own chair on the chocolate-colored carpet. I remember how I stared with love at the ash on my father's waistcoat, at his stained mustache, at my mother's worn-away shoe heels. I stared at it all, and I loved it all. I needed it all. Since then, I have never left the house. I know what is best for me. And you can't read someone saying, I've never left the house since that day and think oh yeah, that's a healthy person. That's a person who we should look up to,
You're right. I'm glad. You're right. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah.
The verb need too is kind of telling too. I need all that. I need the familiarity of,
And to say, I know what's best for me. Anytime anybody says, I know what's best for me, they've accepted something that that probably isn't best for them.
It's this really reminded me of Siddhartha, the person with the comfortable life going out into the world. But for Siddhartha, he leaves the palace and he sees sickness and poverty and starvation and all these things. And, it takes him, on the path to becoming the Buddha. But it especially looks bad for this character if you recognize that he didn't become the Buddha from this. He went right back to the palace and he never left again.
Yeah. I guess the line that made me really kind of pull back Let me see right here. It's actually a little bit right above what you just read. So this quote is describing the last vision he has of the woman that he was in love with but ran away from. In the dark, it appeared to be suspended above the curb like a pale balloon with a red mouth painted upon it. A mouth that, taking a single diabolical curve, was more like the mouth of a wild beast than a woman. And I felt at that moment that Mervyn Peake was being a little unfair, but that could be 100% the narrator. That could be Mervyn Peake saying, "Look, this is the vision that the narrator sees, not a vision of truth." Yeah, I don't know.
That's a really
wish
good
it was
point.
supernatural.
In a sense, that's almost like a strength of that's like a writer's strength to be able to create a narrator so repugnant that you almost mistake it for the author's true beliefs. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm saying, like, for myself and, for you, when I read it, I was like, ooh, this is nasty. This is not a good look. But comparing this to something like, Dangerous Visions, which Bob and I read 6 months ago.
I read some of it.
Yeah. A lot of those stories, I did not walk away with the feeling that the author and the narrator had separate views.
Right.
I for many of those stories, I was like, oh, this exists because the author is intentionally trying to be offensive, to be disgusting, to be violent, to be creepy, and I think that the larger narrative framing of these ideas and of these descriptions kind of undercuts the power of the narrator, because in a sense we look down upon that narrator, and I don't want to say pity, but we condemn him,
Yes, and the writer might be doing the same. I think, of course, of Nabokov's Lolita, which is the perfect example of that. I think now, especially, I watched a video that said 10 books that you see on a man's shelf that are warning you should run. And Nabokov's Lolita was one of those. And I feel like for many years we've read it and taught it as Nabokov exploring the mind of somebody that was completely disgusting to him. That is the separation of the writer and the narrator. People write serial killer novels. That doesn't mean they're serial killers, right? So it is interesting reading this older stuff that's from that's a different ideology, and looking at it with a new ideology's eyes. I think it is important to remember that there is a difference between the writer and the narrator. Writers write about bad people. It happens.
Yeah.
In fact, it's fun.
Nuance is good. Nuance is good.
Yeah. Mervyn Peake,
I don't know.
first time. Was that your guys' first Mervyn Peake ever?
Yeah. I finished it and I was like, I was gonna text Bob. We should read Gormenghast. I mean, the trilogy. We should check it out. But Lord only knows on the stack of books we have coming,
right?
How and where we could fit it in. But it would be fun. Well, Chris, as always, it was a pleasure having you on, and I really appreciate what you bring and like your perspective on everything. Viewers who are watching this and want to check out more of Chris's show, feel free to click his thing. I think we're doing YouTube collabs now. Chris, what are you going to be up to on for the next while on your channel?
I have no idea right now, but I do want to say for the collab thing that anybody that's watching this because it showed up on my channel that is not subscribed to Zach and Bob at Will of Genre absolutely should subscribe for really in-depth discussions about books. I love being on the show with you guys. I have so much fun talking with both of you.
Talk to you later, Bob and Chris.
Talk to you later, Chris and Zach.
Talk to you later, Bob and Zach.